Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today to present an updated version of Deloitte's 2021 TMT, that's Technology, Media, and Telecommunications predictions. It's been an exciting year. I want to start off by talking about cloud computing. We, back in December of 2020, issued a forecast for the cloud. Now, this slide shows what we published, and I'm going to be showing you an updated version shortly. This slide shows what our forecast was last December. So, in 2019, hyperscale cloud revenues were up a little over 30%, which was a great number for 2019. Meanwhile, non-cloud spending was up about 1%. Okay, that's not bad. Now, for the first 3 quarters of 2020, what we observed is that cloud grew 31, 25, 27, and non-cloud shrank 16, 9, and 10. Our prediction was that for 2021, that we would continue to see cloud growth. We said that we thought that cloud spending would grow at 30% or so in 2022, 2021, 2023, for the foreseeable future. That was strongly in contrast to many other people who thought that cloud would do well in 2020 but pull back in this year. Basically, as the effects of the pandemic wore off, we would see cloud begin to still grow, but not as quickly as it had. Now, I put this slide together this morning, and it has the updated data. So as you can see, 2019 hyperscale cloud grew at 31% and non-cloud grew at 1%. For the full year of 2020, hyperscale grew at just under 30%, 29%. Meanwhile, it was a terrible, terrible year for non-cloud IT spend, down 11%. Now let's take a look at our updated numbers. Isn't this exciting? I feel like I'm watching poll results come in. In Q1 of 2021, we have all the numbers from the big hyperscale cloud providers, and they grew 31%. Wow, that's as fast as 2019. No signs of slowing there. And meanwhile, non-cloud IT spending, which was expected to bounce a little, grew a not terrible 6%. Now, we don't have that non-cloud number yet. It should come out in October or November. But for Q2 of 2021, cloud is now surging an astonishing 36% year over year. Believe it or not, 18 months into the pandemic, the growth in cloud, as my wife calls it, the COVID catapult, has driven cloud to a level that we haven't seen in years. Let's spend a little time talking about what all that means. As you can see on this slide, what we looked at back in 2019 is just under 60% of global enterprise workload was in fact still done on-premise. Total cloud, now that's public, private, and hybrid altogether, was just a shade over 40%. Meanwhile, it looks like by the end of this year, give or take a month or two, it looks like by the end of this year, we will have flipped that situation. Where we had about 60% of enterprise workload on-prem and 40% in the cloud, it now looks like 60% or more may in fact now be done in the various forms of the cloud. This is a remarkable transformation, and I want to spend just a second or two explaining why. Now, fairly obviously, some of this is due to the pandemic, some of this is due to ongoing digital transformation, but I actually want to talk about 2 trends on this slide. This actually didn't come out of my research last December. This came out of conversations I've had with clients around the world in Europe, North America, Asia Pacific, as a matter of fact, in the Philippines itself. 2 things that I have noticed. Some of you are probably familiar around the world with this thing called vaccine hesitancy. People out there know that COVID is serious, but some people are hesitant to get the vaccines, and that seems to be causing some problems. In the same way, there's a kind of cloud hesitancy. People out there knew the cloud was an ongoing trend, but were worried about things like vendor lock-in and price and reliability and security and data sovereignty. And they always knew that the cloud was interesting, but they didn't really embrace it. Something interesting happened. I've been talking to these clients and they said, Duncan, you know what happened? We had to move some of our operations to the cloud last year, okay? We were scared. We didn't want to do it. We went ahead and did it. And you know what we discovered? We discovered that a lot of our concerns were excessive. Yes, of course, there are issues around security and reliability and pricing and vendor lock-in. All that stuff is still true, but they are manageable issues rather than things that deter you from moving to the cloud. So, Duncan, even though COVID forced us to move to the cloud, now that COVID looks like it's beginning to recede in many geographies around the world, we are continuing our accelerated rate of cloud adoption because essentially by forcing people in, they have reduced the level of of cloud hesitancy that I am seeing out there. So that's an interesting one. But you know what's almost a bigger factor? Some of my clients didn't particularly move to the cloud during the pandemic in 2020 or even 2021 on their own. Instead, what they're telling me is that their large enterprise software providers, these are the database providers, BI, analytics, ERP, database, all of these various tools, enterprise tools, the large software providers are in fact moving to the cloud and bringing these clients along with them. And once again, they are saying, we moved a absolutely mission critical part of our operation to the cloud. And you know what? It's going well. I actually call this vendor drag along. So between the elimination of cloud hesitancy and large enterprise software providers dragging their customers almost against their will into the cloud, we are confident that our 30% growth in hyperscale cloud will be conservative for this year, 2021, and may well be conservative for 2022 again. It looks like 30% plus. One thing I do want to point out on this slide here, it's 2021 and an awful lot of us are worried about the environment. The question I often get is the cloud environmentally friendly? And my answer is yes, and it's getting better. Doing something in the cloud almost always has a 75 to 80% reduction in carbon emissions compared to doing it on-prem. And the really good news, now this happens to be from Google, but this would be true of all of the hyperscale providers. The other piece of good news is that we are seeing continuous improvement in power efficiency across data centers. Data centers that used to be at 1.22, meaning that 22% of the electricity used across data centers was wasted on heat and ventilation and air conditioning and lighting and stuff like that. That inefficiency has dropped from 22 down to 1.11. They have, over the last 13, 14 years, they in fact have doubled the efficiency of their systems. The cloud is green. Now, the next topic I want to discuss is the intelligent edge. This is super important for computing and telecoms. What is the intelligent edge and what's our forecast? So, edge computing is one of the hot topics out there. I want you to look at this slide. It's a little busy, my apologies, but as you can see, you've got kind of the core data centers and regional data centers. That's on the sort of left side. But then on the right side, you've got edge points and endpoints. That's the edge. People are increasingly placing computing power, processing, artificial intelligence, and machine learning over there at that right-hand side of the slide. That's the edge computing we're talking about. There's a lot of benefits. Moving stuff to the edge enables lower latency for things and tasks where you need rapid response. It reduces the cost of long-distance data flows. It enhances flexibility and scalability. It maximizes resiliency. You don't need to worry about moving your data to a data center half a planet away. Now, not on this, it also significantly enhances privacy and security, data sovereignty by locating processing in, for example, the Philippines. You don't need to worry about sending it somewhere else. So really super important that there's this laundry list of potential benefits from edge AI. Now, what actually is our prediction? So what is our prediction for the intelligent edge? We see the global market in 2021 being about 12 billion. We're still waiting for numbers from the second half of the year, but that feels about right. Critically, this growth is being driven this year by telecoms and hyperscale cloud providers. Interestingly, not competing with each other, but working with each other hand in hand, driving the intelligent edge. This is such a hot space. We are seeing VC dollars pouring into the technology companies that are providing it. It is a real-world technology. A leading Asian port, as an example, was able to reduce labor costs by 70% and increase efficiency by 30%. The final topic I want to touch on is video visits. I'm only going to spend a minute on this. Everybody knows that the pandemic accelerated the use of telehealth. We have seen this market grow. It is a massive, massive market worth billions or tens of billions of dollars and translating into hundreds of millions of video visits per year. The slide I want to focus on this one comes out of a Deloitte report. This was published earlier this year, where it looked at virtual visits as a percentage of total visits and what clinical leaders thought should be the correct number, not during the pandemic, but post-pandemic. As you can see from this slide, 30 to 34% of the clinicians we surveyed said that video visits, that telehealth, was the optimal solution for chronic condition management and primary care going forward. Yes, video visits were accelerated by the pandemic, but we expect this behavior to stick going forward. Many doctors, hospitals, and patients are finding it more convenient, faster to add a video visit, not to replace in-person visits. You still need those, of course. But we do see video visits being a new feature in the medical landscape going forward. I'm going to close off with a few sneak peeks at some of our 2022 topics. I can't tell you what the actual predictions are, but I can say if you're interested in enterprise use of advanced networking technologies such as Wi-Fi 6 and 5G, we got a topic on that. Fixed wireless access booming in the Philippines, but around the world as well. What's going on with the continuing and ongoing chip shortage? And here's a big one. What are we seeing in terms of regulation of artificial intelligence technology by computer companies, technology companies, smartphone companies, and telecom companies? All of these will be featured in our 2022 TMT predictions launching in December of this year. For my final slide, I always put up a contact slide. Please do feel free to reach out to me by email, follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Always happy to hear from people who've seen a version of the predictions. Thank you very much and have a wonderful rest of conference.